This week's podcast is titled Hypocrisy. So the conversation we're going to have today is on hypocrisy. As I have been thinking about the conversation we need to have about hypocrisy, a few things have come to my mind. When I'm thinking about hypocrisy, I'm thinking about really four different things. One, I'm thinking about people who use hypocrisy to gain power. That's never been more apparent than it has been in probably the last 12 years of politics, maybe more than that, where we find politicians are very hypocritical in what they say as compared to what they actually do and believe. And they do that for power. There is a large portion of our population that are very gullible and easily tricked. They can hear just the right key words that make them jump on board like you're a good guy, even if you have zero intention of actually carrying through with that, or even if it's the exact opposite of what you believe. So when I think about hypocrisy, I am most concerned with the people that know they're being hypocritical. They know they're saying things that they don't believe. They know they are tricking people to get their vote or in order to gain their power or their own financial resources. And obviously, that's a bad thing. So when we look at hypocrisy overall is a bad thing. But kind of rising to the top of the worst type of hypocrisy are those people that know they're being hypocritical and they do it anyway because they use that to gain support and power. And they're actually, their manipulation of people is very sophisticated and quite cunning. I don't want to use smart or intelligent because when you look at smart and intelligent ways to manipulate people, I'd rather call that their cunning. And so that's kind of the worst type of hypocrisy to me, is the hypocrisy that we see in modern day politics. So the second type of hypocrisy I want to talk about is accidental hypocrisy. This is where someone truly believes something that may in fact be false. And so we see people, especially in their religious beliefs, they act in ways that are antithetical to their actual theology. And in doing this, they actually are hypocritical, but they're not being hypocritical on purpose, because in their belief system or in their traditions or what they've been taught, they hold so strongly to that they're not able to recognize that their actual actions and the things they say and the way they treat some people is in fact hypocritical. This would also be the people that perhaps are following that first group of hypocritical people that I talked about, those that are politicians or leaders who purposefully use hypocritical statements and things to trick and coax people in to their way of thinking. And so when we're looking at that, the second group of people, they're not really innocent, but they are innocent in the way that they are the groups that are tricked into being hypocritical by others who have led them into hypocritical beliefs and actions. These are people that, in my mind, they should be able to be taught. They should be able to be impacted by authentic religious beliefs and theology. Even looking at their own beliefs and theology that are valid and the foundations are valid, they should be able to recognize the mismatch of what they truly believe to these hypocritical notions when it comes to helping and loving others, our neighbors, or even following the implied commandments that are embedded in the Beatitudes. You know, if the merciful are blessed, then shouldn't we strive to be merciful? Things like that. The third group of people that I think of in this area of hypocrisy would be those people that they know they're being hypocritical, or they know there's some portions of their beliefs that are hypocritical, but because of their selfishness or their own desires, they just don't care. Perhaps these are people that recognize the hypocrisy of maybe their religious institutions or their political leaders or their religious leaders, but they don't care enough to let that impact what they actually do and who they support. I really don't understand that. There are some people that I would think are good people, but are supporting hypocrisy that's visible, that they recognize and they know, but yet they don't care. Those are innocent people. They recognize that something is not correct, but they go along with it because, well, this isn't really right, but if I support them in this not right, there's something else that I really want. And so it's like a give and take. I'm going to overlook this because of this. And that sort of hypocrisy is not correct as well. Okay, so I've talked about three types of hypocrisy. One, people that create examples of hypocrisy because it benefits them. The actors say things that are truly hypocritical to how they really act and believe, but they know if they create this persona with these hypocritical things, they know they're the right things to say to hook people in. That's one type of hypocrisy. It's not good. The second type would be the people that actually get hooked and tricked by that. They are accidentally hypocritical. They have not yet realized that some of these statements that hook them in, these beliefs and these theologies, perhaps that are generationally foundational to their own faith, they have not recognized yet that, wait a second, that clearly does not match with the foundations of our faith. And if you're looking at Christianity, which is my personal faith, and so that's what I talk about most of the time, if these behaviors and theologies are not aligned with the actual lessons and message and models of Jesus, to perpetuate that is hypocrisy. And there are people that are perpetuating that, and it is hypocritical, but they haven't yet come to the place where they fully recognize that, wait a second, this is against what Jesus taught. You know, if you look in Matthew 25, that's been flooding social media during this week, and I'm recording this following a week knowing that this podcast is going to be released about 2 weeks out from now. But Matthew 25 has been flooded in my social media feeds, and there's a lot of people talking about Matthew 25. Dr. Stevens this morning at my early church also preached and brought in Matthew 25. Actually, in my Sunday school class, we had a guest speaker who's actually the author of a book we've been following, who flew in from Abilene to spend time with us, and also talked about this idea that's embedded in Matthew 25. It's when Jesus is having the conversation with these people, and he's talking about, well, whatever you've done to the least of these, that's like you did it for me. Or whenever you've not done this for the least of things, then you have rejected me. And I think that's very important and very critical, because who are the least of these? The people that need help, our immigrants that need help. They come to our country because even with all of the hatred they experience here from those who call themselves Americans, or dare I say call themselves Christians, it's better here than what they came from, okay? So we would call those the least of these, the people that need us the most. Whatever we do for them, it's like we're doing it for Jesus. It's like we're serving God. We're following the calling that God has given us to love our neighbors, all of them. And when we refuse to do that, it's like we're rejecting and refusing God. Okay? I think that's pretty clear. And I'm almost thinking these people that are accidentally hypocritical, I would hope that during this last week, they have seen so much of this hypocrisy from the group that suckered them into voting for them, can see this hypocrisy and says, wait a second. I've been fooled. I'm wrong. There's no way this is Christian. This is no way this follows the teachings of Jesus. When I look at the Beatitudes, when I look at whatever you've done for the least of these, that's when you're proving your love for God. Whenever you hurt the least of these, or reject the least of these, or refuse to help those who need help, that's when you're rejecting God. Really, that's what it says. And so I'm almost thinking that as difficult as this last week has been for me and many others, I am really hoping that a good that will come out of this will be that group of people that are accidentally hypocritical. They're still being hypocritical. They are still bogged down in this hypocrisy of their beliefs, the hypocrisy of their political beliefs that they're trying to attach to their theology, and it just doesn't stick. It does not work. So my hope is that our churches and our nation and our communities will see this blatant hypocrisy from that first group of people, and it will impact them so that they wake up and recognize, whoa, this is so not Christianity. And so this is so not right. This is so against what I claim my religious foundations are. And so I'm hoping this second group, or the second type of hypocrisy that I'm talking about, will wake up to this and see the mismatch of that they say they really believe and their practices or their supportive practices that are antithetical to that. The third type of hypocrisy that bothers me a lot would be the people that know that these political statements and political positions, or even these political candidates, are antithetical to Christianity, and they don't care. So they know that it's wrong to not care for the needy. They know it is wrong to treat immigrants poorly. They know it is wrong to support political things that actually hurt groups of people. In some cases, even when it doesn't harm them at all, but they're okay with hurting this other group of people, even though it has zero impact on them. And even if it did have an impact on them, going against the call of God and hurting a group of people, whether it impacts you or doesn't impact you, and most of the time it does not impact you, is hypocrisy. And there are groups of people who know that's hypocritical to following the teachings and models of the Christ. Christianity has the word Christ in it. Jesus came to show a new way of living and loving, because it was not about following the 613 rules that the people had at that time, the religious community that Jesus was born into to save them from their theology of rules. So there are people that they know it's hypocritical, but they don't care. I don't know how they would sit through like a sermon that I heard this morning by Dr. Stevens, focused, well, it wasn't completely focused, but a portion of his sermon was on Matthew 25, and even the special speaker in Sunday school today touched on that, and it's been all over social media. It's interesting that I can post some funny little joke with a dog, and out of my thousands of Facebook friends, like, oh, that's so cute. But if I post a scripture, and I have this week, that comes from Matthew, that are actual words of Jesus, and then I go through and look and see who liked, I am shocked and stunned that there's a large group of people that I consider friends that will not like my posts if I'm posting about showing mercy, love, and grace. Because they feel if they show they like that, that's kind of against who they voted for in the last election. That's very telling. And that's that third group where I call it people, they know it's hypocritical and they just don't care. And I don't know how you get past that. Okay, so I've talked about 3 types of hypocrisy. 1, people that are purposefully hypocritical because they know they can snag people, they can snag support, they can gather a following, they can get elected if they peddle their hypocrisy in a way that will trick people. The second group are the people that are getting tricked. These are the people that are accidentally hypocritical, but they should be waking up soon. If they're truly following the teachings of Jesus, and if they truly pray and seek, I don't know how they would avoid being confronted by this hypocrisy. And at that point, they either change or they fall into the third group, the people that recognize the hypocrisy and they don't care. My 4th point today on talking about hypocrisy is a self-evaluation. So number 1, I'm going to ask this of me, and you ask this of you individually as well. Hypocrisy. Do I purposefully use hypocrisy to get people to join my way of thinking? Do I say things and share things that I know are not true because I know those are good hooks to catch people? I know there are times when I'll see something on Facebook and I say, oh, that so connects with me, and I share it, and then later I'll see where someone posts, well, actually, if you go to Snopes, that's not exactly true, or that's kind of a twist of that. And then I get back in and say, oh, I shouldn't have posted that so quickly. So I go out and I check. And if in fact it's based on some bad information, even if I really like the post, I will delete it. I will delete the post. And then I will share that information when I see other people sharing, especially if they've reshared it because I shared it, because then I feel convicted that I did something I shouldn't have done. Now, at the time I shared that, That's not a purposeful hypocrisy. I didn't do that to hook people knowing I was sharing something that was wrong. At the moment that I find out, oh, that wasn't right, then I take it away. And sometimes even when I share something that is true, in the way I present that, then I start thinking, yeah, I really shouldn't phrase things that way. And I do go and edit my post. Maybe it'd be nice if I was a little smarter and had things posted better without some of the antagonizing language or triggers. Sometimes I post things that on purpose I want to trigger people. Well, that's not good. But if I'm thinking of that number one hypocrisy, do I purposefully use hypocrisy to get people to come along with me? Do I spread things that are not true to hook people? No, I don't do that. So, in this fourth part of this conversation, I am not guilty of that. Thank goodness. I couldn't be me if I did those sort of things. Hopefully, you also have passed test number one in hypocrisy. Hopefully, you are not a person that gets people to support you by spreading false things or knowing, hey, if I can pretend to be this, this, and this, I'll get all of these people to support me. So I've got to say and do things so they think I'm with them on this issue and they'll support me. Good. Hopefully you're not that person, because to me that's the worst kind of hypocrisy. The second type, accidental hypocrisy. I will say that there have been times in my life where I have learned that some of my beliefs have not been exactly correct. So when I come to a point where, wow, the truth of what God is calling us to do and this little belief over here don't match, then I must change that, because I don't want to be someone who's hypocritical. And at that point, when I realize there's a mismatch, I only have two choices. One, fix it and change, or I slide down into the area that becomes, I have recognized the hypocrisy of my actions and what God really calls me to do. And if I say, I'm not changing, I don't care, then I fall down into that third area. So in my self-evaluation here, I do know that there have been times where I have encountered a mismatch between what God calls me to do and my actual actions or my actual beliefs. And when I encounter that, there have been times where I've had to change my beliefs. There have been times where I've had to change my actions. And failure to do that would move me to the category of, I recognize my hypocrisy and I don't care, I'm not going to change. I don't care if me saying this hurts somebody. I'm going to say it anyway because those people over there, they weird me out. Can't do that. So obviously, in the way that I've self-assessed with that hypocrisy, I then have to go to the next area. Okay, are there some things that I know is a mismatch between what God calls me to do and I refuse to change? If I refuse to change and know it, then that becomes a very dangerous place to find yourself in hypocrisy. Okay, hypocrisy is part of our world. Is hypocrisy part of you? Is hypocrisy part of me? I don't want hypocrisy to be part of me. So I constantly evaluate what I think and what I do with that which I know I am called to do and be. This morning I was getting ready to go to church, and let me tell you, I had a big struggle today. I know this podcast is going to come out 2 weeks from now. Hopefully things are different in 2 weeks than they are this week. This was a very, very difficult week for me. And during this week, I did not want to go to church. I teach a class 2 Sunday nights a month at a church in the Heights. I regularly attend a church service there at 11 o'clock, but I also attend an 8:30 service with my ex-wife, and I attend a 10 o'clock Sunday school class that I really, really like. The problem is I can't get out of my Sunday school class at 11 or 11:05 and 11:10 and get to the 11 o'clock service in the Heights and not be late. So there are Sundays where I either leave a little early of Sunday school, or I just know I'm going to be late to church, and I go into the church, my 11 o'clock service, I go in 20 minutes late. Today was a Sunday where I did not want to go to any service, but this is one of the 2 Sundays each month where I teach a class. So I do have a class at 5 o'clock tonight that I have to go to because I am facilitating the class. So obviously that's one service I have to go to today. And so then there's 3 others. So I had 4 services to go to today. I didn't want to go to any of them. And here was my greatest fear. My greatest fear was that in going to one of the 4 services, well, the one that I'm facilitating, so I feel pretty confident that we're going to be okay at the one where I'm facilitating. But I was afraid at the other 3 that something would be said politically that I did not want to hear during my time of worship. And I'm not specifically necessarily focused on, I don't want to hear something political at church that I disagree with. Kind of today, I didn't even really want to hear something that I agree with. Okay? You really can't be politically neutral and be a true follower of Christ. However, that is played out and interpreted in such opposite, diverse ways that the interaction becomes unchristian. I had a great fear this morning about going to church, specifically at my 8:30 church and my 10 o'clock Sunday school class. And I was really afraid of hearing something that edged on political that was so antithetical to my own foundations and my own theology. I was really afraid of going to church and hearing something that would be so against where God calls me that I really thought, I'll never be able to go back to church here. And so I really considered not going to church at all today because I didn't want to hear anything that would make it where I could not go to church there. I have had portions of my life before where I felt like I had no church and I had nowhere to go. And I would tell you, as a person, I do not thrive in that situation. So me not having a place of worship would be extremely difficult. And I don't ever want to return to that place again. And while that is my thought and feeling, I consider myself a regular and active participant with 2 churches. If you want to know more about that, have a conversation with me. I'd be happy to talk about that. I'm not making that part of this podcast right now. But I also have been in the periods of my life where I've had to find a church and searching a church where I belong. And it's very difficult for me to find a church where I can belong, where our theological connections work together. I mean, we don't have to be exactly alike, but we need to be able to work together. And also finding a place where I don't have to hide who I am in order to be able to go there. And I've gone through the church hunting before, and I don't like those periods of my life. And where I am currently, with the 2 fellowships with which I participate, I have come to the conclusion that I'm not church hunting ever again. If anything happens where either one of these churches or both of these churches become unsupportable for me and my walk, my calling, and my theology, then I won't go anywhere. Okay, I have concluded that I won't church hunt ever again. The only difference in that statement would be if I actually found myself moving to a new city. But as long as I'm living in Houston, these two faith communities with which I belong are the last two that I will belong to unless I leave the city of Houston. So I won't church hunt again. So because of that, I really was anxious about going to church this morning. I did not want to go because I was really afraid that I would hear something either from the platform or from conversation with people around me that would make it where I couldn't go there. And so I really was worried about that. When I got to, my ex-wife goes to the same early service with me. And so when she came in before church and we were talking, and I told her, I says, I really almost didn't come today. And I told her, I says, I was afraid based on, and she and I talked about some of the background of what's gone on this week politically in our country. And we were having a conversation. I told her, just because of that, I almost didn't come to church today because I was afraid of people hearing stuff that would make it where I could not come here anymore. And I did not want that to happen. And of course, she gave some good advice. She says, it's none of your business what other people are saying and thinking. And she's right, but it's easier for her to say and think that than it is for me, So, but let me tell you, I got out of my car in the parking lot, and I'm usually 15 to 20 minutes early for church because that's the way I like to be. And the same group of men, usually, sometimes there's a few ladies, but the same group of men are there at the main church doors that open the door, and they always talk to me, and I go in. And one older gentleman made a remark using a word that's one of my trigger words. And I was immediately triggered, but had I been 20 or 30 years younger, I would have been more triggered. But as I'm walking in, I'm smart. I'm an older man at this moment. This man is even older than I am. And as I interact with him, I had a response that made him laugh, so that's good. But as I walked on past, I thought, that word to him doesn't mean what it means to me. And that word triggers me. But how that word triggered me was in no way his intent. And I was over it. Really, I was really over it. Even though I'm talking about it now, I'm over it. It doesn't even upset me. It will not impact my ability to interact with him next Sunday when he opens the door for me. And then as I walk in, there's another man who's always there. Both he and his wife are both ushers at the church. And they're usually in the next set of doors going into the sanctuary, handing out the bulletins and the order of service things. And he handed me and I always speak to him, and he actually came to the last men's ministry chili cook-off, and we sat at the same table, which was more conversation than we probably had in the last 4 or 5 years, however long that I've seen him every Sunday morning there. And as I walk in, he said, and see if I can get this right, and it actually made me tear up in church. It made me teared up. And so I went and found my pew, and I sat down and said, okay, where's the tissue? Because that's what this Sunday's going to be about. Although I didn't turn into the emotional wreck that I kind of felt, I know what this Sunday's going to be like. Especially then when I saw the order service and saw the songs that were being sung, which, great job, James Kelly. The songs today, it's like you peeked in my head and this is what I need, and it was the right style of music for me. But as I walked in, let's see if I can get this exactly right. He said, I should have wrote it down before I started this. Well, I didn't know I was going to talk about this because I'm talking about hypocrisy. And this really doesn't align with hypocrisy, but it really does, because I am afraid of hypocrisy. And I'm afraid of the people that know their hypocrisy and they don't care. But that middle group, I'm the people that are accidentally hypocritical. That's the people that hurt me on accident. There are people that hurt me on purpose. They don't bother me as much as the people that hurt me on accident. So he said, thank you for being you. And I just kind of looked at him. No, I think he said, thank you for being the real you. And I said, well, thank you for saying that. See, he don't know that I got triggered out on the sidewalk before I came in the door. But between walking there to there, I had already processed that and said, he has no idea what that word means to me. That's okay. So I walked on. And so he said, thank you for being the real you, and for continuing to show up every week. And so I said, thank you. And then I walked on, and then I turned around. And I told him, thank you for what you said. That's not a statement I would hear at many churches. And then he said, well, we love you here. So I walk down the aisle, and I'm early to church. And so I go in and I sit down and say, okay, where's the box of tissue for this row? And then I'm looking and I see the songs and says, I'm going to have a hard time holding it together today. But as it turns out, I was fine. I wasn't an emotional wreck. There are times in my life where I would be an emotional wreck. But I'm saying all of this to explain to you why I had such a hard time going to church this morning and why I just did not want to go. Because I didn't want to hear anything that would prevent me from being able to come back. And so it started from the triggered word that I miraculously was not triggered by, because there was a level of understanding in me that wouldn't have been there 20 to 30 years ago. The man who went out of his way to say something to me that I needed to hear, which means I'm not invisible. I've shared with many of you before, at this season of my life, God calls me to be visible. I'm not hiding. I'm not pretending. I am visible. So I went on, sat down. I was worried about Dr. Stevens and what he was going to preach, but you know what? He did not deviate from his current sermon series. Very good. Did not find the need to drop any little bits of current events or history on us. Stay focused on what his message was today, and it was good. Talking about whatever you've done to the least of these. Now, I connected that to this week. Even if this week didn't happen, I think that still would have been his message. I see the relevance and the connection. It should have been fine. And then going into Sunday school class, and we had, my Sunday school class now is doing a study using Johnny Cash and using a book. I'm not going to get the title right here. I'll stick it up when I'm editing here. We're using a book using Johnny Cash for our Sunday school. And when Dr. Russell was advertising this was going to be the study in January and February of this year, I made a comment back to him and said, I'm going to have to think about this one a while. And then he responded with an LOL. So it's, I was a little skeptical about how this is going to, and it's actually going fine. The author of the book actually lives in Abilene, and he came in and spoke to us today. With everything that happened today, everything was just the way it should be for me today. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast. Thank you for watching.